I'm just waiting for you.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the My Friend's Basement Studio podcast. This is a podcast about our studio, My Friend's Basement Studio, podcasting, tech tips.
It's really the diary of our business. And I think we talked about last time too.
More of a suicide note.
Talking about
we talked about the pros of having a
that's
business.
what we talked about last time, but I think we talked about being a little bit more engaging. We're gonna need to find a way. We really want to drive engagement overall too with people who are trying to start their own podcast, in particular people who are in a similar vein as us, which is we're trying to turn podcasting into a business. We're trying to do it on a studio level, and we're going to be rolling out in-house content soon. But really, if there are people out there who want to learn from our diary, the tech tips that we've learned, equipment, strategy about releasing, we're hoping to grow that engagement. So if you have questions or anything, let us know. DM on Instagram, My Friend's Basement Studio, email myfriendsbasementstudio@gmail.com. But just get in touch with us. We'll try and grow it to be an interactive diary of how we're growing our business, because we know, as you said early on, you can come fail with us. You can learn from our mistakes, but we are growing. And so we're trying to help people learn with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So hit us up, myfriendsbasementstudio@gmail.com. With any questions, comments, drop it in the comments here if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, we literally, that's how we made our last episode. Someone commented the idea, and they were super happy that we did it.
Yeah.
Before talking more, we'll be talking about our studio setup. A little bit more of that. We've never really touched on what we've done, and obviously, if you're watching, it looks different.
Yeah.
If it looks worse, don't tell us, or get a million of your friends to comment that it looks worse.
I can't decide. I think it's like it's a step in the right direction.
Yes, exactly.
But also a lateral move.
I fully agree. I think when I texted you, it was literally like studio redesign, temporary studio redesign.
Yeah.
Because right now we are sourcing themes.
Yeah.
For me, I think it was just the shelf taking up a weird amount of space. There's a backlight issue. We're going to talk about the space. We don't need to go into it now, and we can maybe analyze what we've done a bit.
This setup is when your eyes are too big for your stomach in the grocery store, and then we're gonna get to the checkout lane. We're gonna keep some, remove some, and be like, we need a better plan.
I mean, this right here, roommate moved out. We have a new roommate in. He goes by Eric or Greg, depending on who you ask. Not him though. Don't ask him. He goes by Eric if you ask him. But our roommate moved out, and he'd asked if anyone wanted this. And I said yes, but then he didn't give it to me before he left. He just left it in the room. And I went, I am taking that before my new roommate moves in and knows what he's missing.
Yeah, it'll be a great little thing. I think it also, the last shelf, not nearly as sturdy as this.
Yeah,
which kind of like, when people would move their mics, sometimes the last one would tip. So,
let's save a little bit more of that. We always talk about lessons learned, and we're going to do some tech tips, and then we'll talk about our setup and our tech tips.
So today we're talking about the literal podcasts and lighting setup and like the technical details of the space.
Yeah, a little bit more of the tech side, and then maybe some practical things. There's so many videos out there that will talk through lighting and stuff. I watched a ton of them, but we can kind of boil some of that stuff down and just get you knowledgeable too, because when people come here, we also allow them to move some stuff. Obviously, they're not going to do a full redesign, but just knowing why things are the way they are at a high level is really important.
Yeah.
But what did you learn? What are your lessons learned?
Lessons learned for the week in podcasting. For me, I went on the road to Vermont this weekend for comedy, and I think I really learned the lesson of, it was kind of a show booked on shortish notice. I had like 2 weeks of notice basically, but always have one episode in the chamber, in the backlog. I think if you can be an episode ahead, it's only beneficial. Like, I don't think you should be 8 episodes ahead, because it helps when you're talking about current topics and the listener can relate the week the episode comes out. But life happens. So always have like an episode on deck. If you can always be 1 week ahead of recording and like you end up super busy with an obligation, maybe there's an emergency, you can maintain that consistency without having to just squeeze a recording. And like for me, for Don't Quit Your Day Job, at least, I don't do remote recording. So I don't want to squeeze someone and then have it be like a remote thing. It's just not the same. So,
yeah, I would say that.
That's my lessons
It's not the
learned.
same.
And the lessons learned is it paid off. I didn't mess up and miss a week. So.
Yeah. Lessons learned. I mean, time management is always something I'm working on and I struggle with pretty badly.
Yeah.
In the way of not like, there's some mismanagement, but it's more of like, I can do that in an hour and it takes 6 hours. And I'm like, then whatever else I had planned to do just falls back and becomes overwhelming. So I think really a lesson learned, whether it's podcasting, because I think so many people have ideas of what they want to do. They don't always know how much time it takes.
Right.
And this is just like, it sounds dumb because I should have learned this lesson a long time ago, but always give yourself more time than you need to get something done.
Yep.
We had no one in the studio this Saturday, and so I just spent a bunch of time rearranging. We moved the couch that we used to have in here. But then I started cleaning out the rest of the apartment. It's just like, I should have known this is going to be like a week-long thing, but my eyes are bigger than my work appetite.
Yep.
And I just like, if I had more time, things would be better. But I think that's true of like any business thing. I've read a book that's about productivity. And one of the things it says is to mark down what you do every half an hour for like a week or so. Mm-hmm. And I think it's helpful, one, to keep yourself accountable, but also to kind of start to figure out how long things take. And I am so in my head where I go, I'm not going to track time because it just slows down. I just do one thing after another.
Yeah.
That's not helpful. And being able to be like, no, this is going to take me roughly 2.5 hours. Don't think it's going to take 1 hour. Those things are helpful.
You always underestimate.
I always do it.
Because you're also like, you're a very thorough worker. Like you definitely analyze and like, even if you're just like moving, like even if you're just picking lights, you'll spend 8 hours researching instead of picking like, I mean, spend 30 minutes to an hour and figure out something quick, I think
it's like editing stuff like that. Anything that's going out. We just edited with S&D and like going through and make sure everything sounds good. But I think a lot of that's like a reflection. Like we're trying to become experts in the space.
Yeah.
And if we're always putting out good stuff, then it's a lot easier to convince people that we do good work than just telling people. But yeah, I tend to be thorough, but just taking that time. And I think it's similar to you with like book out extra time to record an extra one. Literally everyone that comes in here just underestimates how much time things take.
Everybody, everywhere, all at once. Yeah. All underestimating, especially with podcasting. Especially, I'd say most people want to make some type of content, whether that be podcasting or not. And when people make things, they underestimate just how much time it takes, one. And two, when you start making things, that's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
That's not like a little project like, oh, I just do a little project every week. No, it's like a lifestyle choice to like, I am going to commit this time for the entire foreseeable future to this project. And when people start things, just be aware. It's also the manage expectations, If you sign up for something, you got to be ready to see it through. And sometimes the ability to know if you can see it through or not really boils down to knowing yourself, your time management, and your ability to commit and communicate.
Yeah. I did see something that I've been watching a lot of TED Talks on productivity. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it sounds
4 hours of TED Talks.
That's how I become more productive. Just watch TED Talks.
Addicted to self-help books.
No, I think I just realized like I would put on some YouTube entertainment type things. I'm like, let me just put on a TED Talk instead while I'm eating. Because I would actually even eat and work at the same time, like using the computer. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, just put this on. It's fine. But a lot of the productivity things too are about like not doing more, but actually how to manage your time better.
Yeah.
But I saw one thing that made me feel a lot better. Just watching some video, and it was like, maybe instead this year reading a lot of books, just read one really thoroughly. I'm like, you want me to read less? Okay.
I forgot who I heard it from today, but they were talking about the fact that you can just kind of skim a book. Like you don't have to. You can get a book and you can just read parts of it. You don't have to like read the whole book, which is insane to me because I feel like if I'm going to read a book, I have to read front to back every single thing. But you can, if like nonfiction, you can just kind of like jump around. You can just read and then set it down if you want.
I was getting into speed reading at one point, which I'm a slow reader. I'm a thorough reader. My retention is a lot higher, but my speed of reading is very slow.
He's only read Harry Potter.
Yes, several times. But apparently the speed reading thing, some of it too is like just keep your eye moving the entire time and like make sure that it doesn't drift. But it's like also just start skipping over certain words and let your mind fill it in. I was like, that's crazy. I feel like the words are there on purpose.
I know. I don't know if it's like what it is, but I read my whole life. I read by just like skipping line. I go like this and get like each line. And if I'm confused by the end, then I'll go back and read it. And I first tried to read like word by word when I was like 22. And I was like, oh my God, the comprehension is insane here.
Well, this isn't a reading only podcast.
Yeah, not a reading podcast.
Any tech tips?
Tech tip. So, this week you are consuming the tech tip right now. Nicer lens. I brought in my nice lens for this, and before we were shooting at 60 frames per second.
We still are with 4.5 aperture and 800 ISO. Yeah,
and now this lens I can go down to 2.8 aperture with. I think we're at 400 ISO.
Yeah, we dropped it, which we reduced the grain.
Yes, we reduced the noise in the image by half just by having a nicer lens. And just, I was concerned at first about the depth of field for f2.8. Because sometimes, the closer we are to the camera, the narrower the depth of field gets. Yeah. And it's actually pretty good. It gets like most of the stage, which is nice.
Yeah, so. I mean, I'm sure there's a science too, but I think, the lens is definitely helpful. I feel like the idea of
you think there's a science
of the depth of field.
Yeah, that's like photography.
No, I was just saying there is like we can read up on how many feet for the ISO.
You can do like a calculation, or you can just turn the knob and figure it.
I would say there's another tip. It's a short tip. If you're shooting video and there's a light, sometimes you will get bars literally across your screen. And you'll see this. I remember when I was first starting shooting with my Canon, I went to London, and then there's a bunch of bars, and I wasn't the only person experiencing this. I was trying to figure out why it happened. My teacher was not helpful. When someone asked that question, he basically had no answer. And fortunately, I had spent some time because I'm like, why are all the good shots getting these lines going through it? And basically, if your shooting speed, so you're shooting at 29 frames per second, if your shutter speed isn't double, you can introduce bars into your shooting. I'm not going to say that's
for video.
For video.
Oh, okay.
That's not for all cameras. I just know Canons, that was very common. So when you mentioned we shoot at 60 frames per second, that's because our camera's shooting at 29.
Oh, that's right.
Not 60. Our shutter's 60. It's because we're shooting at 29 frames per second. So it's double. And if you don't do that, you can run into some issues.
Right.
And that's a
good tech tip.
Yeah, it was incredibly frustrating. You're like, but the other thing too, once you know that, you're limited in how you can change your shutter speed when shooting video. Obviously,
instead of having the triangle of aperture, shutter speed, ISO, you only have aperture and ISO after that.
Yeah.
And that's why they use in video cameras, they have I forget what they're called, but they're like sunglasses for the cameras.
Oh, yeah.
If you're like shooting outside.
The filters.
Yeah.
And then then it also
ND filter. ND.
Oh, yes. So the other thing too, though, if we have your camera aperture can drop.
Yeah.
Lower than ours. Our other ones were basically kit ones or ones that had was it 3.6 or 4 was the lowest.
Yeah.
And as you zoom in, it becomes, the aperture gets raised.
Yeah.
And then if you have a floor to that, you're really only working with ISO.
Yep.
And so you're only messing around with that, which is why we had a little bit more grain. But
yeah. So tech tip, this goes for anything, but if you improve the performance capabilities of whether it be your camera, your lens, your microphones, your anything you got, it just gets better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have a, I would say a very, very good microphone setup. Our video setup is like decent.
Yeah.
It's good, but it's not, there's a long way, there's a lot of money on the way up on that one.
We bought lights. Okay. So let's get into our subject.
Okay.
Because it's a perfect blend. I went in to buy lights. That kind of was one of the catalysts for us, changing the studio a bit. So our plan long term is to redesign this space, or midterm plans, because we'd love to get into a different space in time. But for this space right now, we want to redesign it. We're coming up with a theme before we buy things, because if we just start buying things, we don't exactly know what we need. If you have thoughts on what you want the studio to look like, let us know.
We're trying to work backwards. We're trying to work from aesthetic first. Imagine a unified theme, and then we want to break it down into pieces that match that.
Exactly. So the first thing, though, because it doesn't really affect the aesthetic, was getting these new lights. We went into B&H. I love going to B&H, and then it became extremely obvious at our budget price point that we could only afford a few lights there, because some lights are ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
So we bought the new lights. And then we started to rearrange things. But let's start, though, talking about our setup with the stuff that we actually have. Yeah. So we have the Shure SM7Bs.
Yep.
We have actually a Canon Rebel behind there that we're shooting with, SL2, which is the first camera I bought.
Well, let's break it down first. So
sure.
The audio routing. So microphone end, we start with our microphone, the Shure SM7B.
Yes.
We have XLR cables that are pig hog. I don't think the brand matters.
Yeah,
make sure you get some with good reviews.
XLR, like you said last week.
Always get XLR. From there, we take our XLR. Not every microphone needs this, but these microphones have a very low power output. They are not active microphones, and they're very quiet without this. So for these, we have cloud lifters.
Yes.
We didn't used to have them when we had the handheld microphones in the studio, because those ones have a very high output power, so you don't need the cloud lifter.
Yeah, we've talked about that in past episodes, the cloud lifter and how important that was.
So if you get the Shure SM7B cloud lifter, you need it, or you need like an amplifier in your mixer. But
yeah, and we bought these arms too, which I don't know. I feel like the price point was higher than the stuff we had bought before, but it wasn't upper end.
One thing I really like about these ones is how quiet they are. They don't have any external springs, so it's not like they don't make noise.
The tension isn't great. These are the blue compass, I believe.
Yeah, maybe we never figured out the tension correctly, but the tension leaves some to be desired. Some of them like automatically unfurl, some of them sag. We can never get it right.
You can only bend them one way too.
Yeah.
But the thing when you think about arms that I don't think we thought about when we bought them initially, and the reason why we had the old bookshelf back there is because we had no place to put them. We had these mic arms that we couldn't attach anywhere.
And we were trying to we wanted to use like tripod stands for the ground, because they have like podcast tripod stands that are like very wide and down here, but with our limited space, we needed a solution that we could actually fit. So and this is a pet peeve of mine, I've literally seen YouTube videos where it'll be like someone interviewing like a famous person in their field or whatever.
Yeah.
They won't care about the microphone placement, so they'll have the host like this, but then the person they're interviewing, the arm will be in front of their face. And I'm like, what are you?
Yeah.
Always have the microphones coming from behind, because this way you can see my face when I'm away from the microphone. If the arm was here, I'd be hidden even if I wasn't talking.
And that's something, I mean, I've thought about. We'd have more flexibility with depth of field if we had something up here. We could put all 4 arms up there, but exactly what you're saying, it would be right in people's face.
Yeah. I also, so after the cloud lifter though,
we have the Tascam Model 12, which works as an audio interface and a mixer.
Right.
We pretty much exclusively use it as an audio interface.
Yes.
Although right now, one of the nice things about it was that we can have a backup recording going for the audio.
Yeah.
I maybe or maybe not have told you this. So we have, we churn out a lot of content. We've worked with over 20 podcasts. I mean, sometimes we're 10 to 15 hours of content per week. So our drive space on our computer fills up, and Adobe creates these temporary files that can be massive. You can go from having like 40 gigabytes free to 15 in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And so one time during a recording, because Adobe Audition was creating these massive temporary files, we ran out of disk space.
Yep.
And thankfully, that time, because I was messing around with it, I was starting to use it more, I had the backup recording going through the mixer.
Yep.
And so I didn't need to stop the recording. I let them go. And then I just replaced the audio with what was in the mixer, because it's very similar. There's almost no difference. And so that's helpful. The other thing about the Model 12 was it's basically the same price as the as an audio interface, like with enough plugs that we have.
Right.
Inputs.
So mixer and audio interface. Audio interface takes your sounds and gives them to your computer. Like that's the thing. You manage it from a software typically. Yeah. Mixer is just audio levels, knobs, making sure things are EQ'd, whatever. And a mixer without an interface would then have like some type of output to like a recorder or something else, similar device basically, or a speaker system.
What the interface actually allows us to do on the back end is once we go from the mixer to the computer, we go to Audition, we use Adobe Audition, but then the interface allows us to separate out the tracks.
Yes.
So instead of having one mix, we have every file from every person recording. Even S&D, we have a phone cable that you can see in their videos that goes into the mixer, and then that's in its own separate track.
Yeah, so you can have a bunch of inputs, have it all put into separate tracks in Adobe Audition.
And we just have a little bit more cleaning capabilities. Just there's a little bit more control. It doesn't come into effect too often, but it doesn't hurt to have. And then when I talked to a person at Sweetwater about buying it, they said that mixer is a perfect setup if we want to live stream at some point, which I think will come into play
at some point. Yeah.
And so basically we're set up for the future that way. But that's basically the audio. I mean,
so the kind of the big building blocks here is you need, like, to do a podcast, you need some type of microphone and you need a thing to record sounds into. Our original setup for small town radio was microphone into the Zoom H6 recorder.
Which is a great setup.
Which is a fantastic setup, works amazingly. The H6 can also be an interface to your computer if you want. But what we've done to make it to improve the quality across the board is we've added a few steps in there, right? So instead of recording from this onto a device, we're recording from the microphone onto the software directly through the mixer, so we can check everyone's gain levels and stuff separately, get the multi-track, all that. Yeah. But fundamentally, it is microphone, recorder, and then you can add steps in there as necessary, like amplification or mixing or EQing, whatever. So yeah, that's it for audio.
I think there's one tip too that I want to mention that we actually ran into last week.
Yeah.
If you have, so we have the XLR cables.
Oh yeah.
And if you have a power line touching it, or it's more problematic when it's running parallel, but anything that has, is it AC current? What is we
AC
have?
Power
running alongside of it, you'll introduce a hum in your XLR cables. So you're not gonna be able to see it. We're not gonna grab the cameras for this. But our audio cables are running parallel to each other along the wall, and then there's no power cords nearby it. And that, if you hear a hum start to get introduced in your recording, then you can start to figure out why. It could even be something in the wall that's hidden.
Yeah.
But that's the benefit of having us here, of being able to, one, trouble check that for you, so you don't need to go around. I remember my early setups, just checking it myself would be a pain. And then also we're back there listening if something happens, and then worst case scenario, we can clean it out with Adobe the isotope that we use.
And like usually like it's a 60 hertz hum because that's the frequency of our power system.
Yeah.
Once you hear it a couple times, you'll know exactly what it is if you ever hear it. But every time you hear that buzz in your audio equipment, there's something that's either like a power cord near your equipment, or maybe your grounding is messed up somewhere, or like this is something I've also had is headphone cables, or sometimes even XLR cables near someone's phone. You can get some weird interference sometimes.
Yep.
But basically, keep your cables away from the other electronics generally, to make sure the sound is clean. If you want to like really spend a lot of money, you can buy shielded cables, which are like XLR cables that have a coaxial or like a plating on the outside, so that like, you know, I'm not going to go into it. But
we got to talk about video, and we have a recording coming in after. But I think that's mostly it. I would say, so video, we're talking about that. We can talk about the space, the new design, some of the principles. Again, this is a temporary. Hopefully in 1 to 2 months, looks very different.
Yeah. So fundamentals of video. Let's start with
fundamentals, and we'll talk about the changes.
You got to put the video on something. So video cameras.
For the video, you need a camera.
Yeah, a camera. So we've had some trial and error with cameras in our time podcasting, and different, more so types of camera.
Types of camera. Yeah, I found the cameras that I want us to buy next.
Yeah.
We don't have the budget right now.
Yeah.
Because you need to buy multiple. Like we could get a multi-camera setup, but
so
we don't need to get into that.
The core is, so when you're picking a camera, something that you need to know right away is that DSLR cameras almost all have a 30-minute recording time limit on them.
And another thing that you need to have is a lot of money.
Yeah. So one thing, there's some like tax law where like video cameras are taxed differently than photography cameras, and that's the whole reason the 30-minute recording limit is built in.
Oh,
it's insane.
I didn't know that.
But so when we did small town radio and we tried video, the first thing we did, we tried just doing DSLR, and we're like, oh, when the video camera cuts out, we'll just like reset it.
Well, I had my phone, because some of the Canon cameras have a phone adaptation.
The wireless connection, yeah.
But so we'd start and stop, but we'd also run into battery issues, because it can die, because then you're also using Wi-Fi to your camera.
So it would cut out every 30 minutes. We'd have to reset it and then keep going. And then you have to piece it together later so it looks normal. It's like pain in the ass. So both of us ditched video for a while. And when I started doing video for Don't Quit Your Day Job, I started with just a GoPro, because I was like, I want to add a video element to this.
Yeah.
And the GoPro is not a bad video choice. It leaves a lot to be desired, but as a starter camera for like a video setup, it's fine. The things I liked about it was that if you plug it into a USB in the wall, and you can just record forever, and it has generally good video. The downside is the lenses on it. You're limited to its field of view and the color settings built into the camera. We noticed a big difference between our cameras and the GoPro in the studio.
So you would need a media mod would really help if you're going to go the GoPro route, because you can plug your audio in directly, which is something you did.
I did recorder. I did the line out of the recorder straight into the GoPro, so that way the GoPro is already recording with the high quality audio from the microphones instead of syncing it up later.
Yeah. So one of the ideas that we had, because we both have GoPros, is our second and third cameras were going to be GoPros in here.
Yeah.
But the issue with that is one, overheating. We had some issues.
They do overheat.
And then two, they don't work well in low light. Those cameras are meant to be outdoors in the sunlight, and just the colors were so terrible. Like it just wasn't even workable.
Yeah.
So that was a quick learning point, but we overcame our limitations with the camera, the 30-minute cutoff, in a few ways that have been helpful. One, dummy batteries are your friends.
Yep. So you plug the camera into the wall.
Basically, different cameras have different types of dummy batteries. B&H has a lot of great options for those things. It goes without saying, they do not sponsor this video. But we always found our dummy batteries. Those have been pretty reliable. I would say still test them out. We've had one works better than the other actually here. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's like
I haven't even noticed that you've switched them.
No, this is the good one. We've always used the good one. It's really, we got lucky. When I started using the second camera, I started to notice like the USB plug-in that the dummy battery goes into to the extension cord, that might be not emitting enough power. It was a lot of weird stuff. Whoa. Don't need to get into it, but the dummy battery, basically, you don't need to worry about your battery anymore.
Right.
And then this to basically overwrite, just go work around the 30-minute cutoff. We got the HDMI, the ATEM Mini Pro.
So we got a switcher.
Yes.
So the switcher is a video like device where we have multiple HDMI inputs, and then it records video onto a hard drive. And the thing the thing that fixes the problem is that the HDMI to the camera, the recording is not taking place in the camera. The camera is just like the eyeball for the switcher.
So it's basically turns it into a webcam.
Yeah.
And there's the ATEM minis have a number of price points. Mm-hmm. The cheapest one does not have a connector to the SD, the hard drive. Which is problematic because then we would need to use OBS to record or some other computer recording software to record.
Right.
And we already mentioned the file size issue that we would have.
Yep.
We'd be writing onto our computer while recording audio. It just becomes a nightmare.
Yep.
So we went for the next step up, the Mini Pro. And then there's one higher. It's like double the price of the Mini Pro. The Mini Pro is like just under $500, I believe. But the next one up has the ability to record every camera at once as separate videos, is similar to the multi-track.
Rest in peace, your hard drive.
And it's basically, we made the strategic decision. One, well, there's a monetary reason why we didn't buy it, but the other one too was we work with so many clients. We'd have so many files, and we also now would be introducing more cutting.
Yeah.
Basically, we don't want to be putting ourselves in a position where we're sending that many files, or basically you would want to be cutting more. It raises the price point of a lot of things.
It's also like if you have three, let's say you have 3 cameras.
Yeah.
For that podcast, you have 3 cameras, 3 files, and you're only using 1/3 of the footage. Because that's the time you have. So it's like your 2/3 of your storage is like wasted just on videos and angles you're not going to use. So
what we have now in our setup is we can switch. We've done a few things with switching, including, glad you're here and y'all had to be here. But you need to have someone touching the buttons, and you only get to see which cameras are showing. I personally think there's a value to having a 3-camera setup. These cameras that I keep alluding to that we won't really go in depth on. Mm-hmm. There are some Sony cameras that work well in low light that also, they're not camcorders. Camcorders can run indefinitely, but these are full-bodied cameras for a decent price point that we can also put our own lenses on and basically just have a more dynamic multi-camera shot.
Yeah.
If we want to do something more creative, it's a long-term plan. But that is a way for us to go to get around having to upgrade the switcher. I actually talked to someone at B&H about it, and they're like, it's really not worth upgrading.
Right.
It just gets something like this, and then you can delete it off the card or whatever. So that's the camera side of it, I think, right?
Yep.
We then, once everything's done, we take the one video file. We're not cut up at half an hour. There's no data limitations in terms of how many files there are, and we attach that to the audio after we've cleaned it, and then basically pretty quickly can have a full seamless podcast.
Yep.
The other side, and maybe arguably the more important side to video, is the lighting.
Yeah.
And this is where we can talk about some of the stuff that we've done. So these let's start with practical lights. Do you know what practical lights, the classification of practical lights?
No. Okay. Here's lighting in a nutshell. Okay.
Okay. We'll step back.
You need enough light so that your camera can see you, right? The more lighting you have, the easier it is for your camera to see you, the less grainy the footage, just everything looks better.
You can lower the ISO.
Yeah. And then what you want, there's 3 types of lights. I don't know the names exactly, but you have the big light to illuminate everything. You typically have a light
light. That's called the key light.
There's the light that comes typically behind you or from the side to differentiate the subjects from the background.
Go to the third one because there's 2 ways.
And then the third one is just like secondary, like detailed writing that sets the background. So I don't know the names.
The one you were talking about. So we have key lights, the big, the main lights.
Yeah.
Hair lights or rim lights are usually the second
rim lights. That's what I've heard about.
Basically creates separation from the background.
Yeah.
And you can have like a backdrop light. 3 light setup is pretty common, or the 3 types being used. So key light, and then there's like a background light.
Yeah.
The ones on set those are the practicals.
Okay.
And that's the classification. Like they're helpful in the set, but you can still see them.
It doesn't provide like lighting to illuminate us, but it adds like depth.
Add some depth, add some color. So everything up here is basically practical lights.
Yep.
Because again, we're remodeling. These are all things that we've just used. The salt rock lamp is and the string lights are from Female Intern. She uses them for her show. Danielle Deluti does. Check out Female Intern. Those are we had them. I just tried the thing with the string lights. It seemed to work. And then we have these here my grow lights.
To keep the plants alive.
Because these are real plants.
Yep. There's no sunlight in this basement.
There's 0 sunlight. And these just happened to be around. I was like, let's try it. And it seemed to work.
It looks pretty good.
I'd love to get like a shade or something on it to make it a little softer and not have this white here.
Yeah.
But what they've done when you step away from it all is they've created they put some light on the back there. They're basically working as a practical rim light, where it's like you can probably see it's getting some light around the edges, but also lightening the backdrop. And then we have just some color stuff on the ground for right now. We'll figure that out. I'd like to figure out a little way to get more pops of color in there. But those are the big things with the lights. I would say
if you look at most YouTubers that like just talk to the camera, most of them have nailed their lighting setup where they have a good key light, they have a good rim light, and then you can see that they have like little lights in the background to kind of illuminate and create depth. Like you can see it everywhere.
So we run into some fundamental limitations. Actually, we should probably wrap within 5 to 10. So I'll run through these things pretty quickly. But we have some fundamental limitations. When you think about the talking head on YouTube, they have much larger separation between themselves and their background.
Yeah.
We can only do so much because if we move closer to the camera, we have to be tighter together on the lens. So it'd be better if we had a wider studio.
Yes, it would be better if we had a wider
studio.
Yeah. Just a bigger place in general, because also like if we move closer to the camera, the depth of field gets narrower very rapidly as well.
So we run into some fundamental things. I'll also talk about just set design very briefly. One of the things that we've heard in feedback about our set is that the bricks, and especially this white, they make the space feel narrower than it needs to be.
Yeah.
When we do come up with a new design, and if you have a uniformed color all around, it can start to trick the eye to make the space seem bigger.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we want to play with because, again, we know it's a narrow space, but if we can make it feel a little bit bigger, then it'll be helpful. One other thing I want to point out too is we covered these bricks intentionally because this white, as you can see right here, is very reflective. The white paint on our walls. And so by putting the bricks up, if you even look just at the wall behind Maxim, the reflection on that light of that light is way less than the reflection here. So the darker colors will eat the lighter color, the light. Yes.
Rewinding here a bit. So in the vein of reflections, like, right, for camera lighting, avoid glossy surfaces in general. Semi-gloss and gloss, terrible for lighting. But back to audio, sound absorption as well.
Oh, yeah.
That is important. You can't see it on camera. We have some absorbers here. We basically came in here and me and Connor just clapped a bunch and found where the echoes are. You'll notice that when people record a podcast just in their living room or whatever, a lot of times it's super echoey because they're in a big hardwood room with hard walls. Like what you want to do to reduce echo is you want to make sure that the space you're talking in doesn't have like a lot of reflection points, but more so the more like in a very broad sense, more clutter helps absorb sound. So the way that sound absorbers work is they have a lot of grooves and surfaces so that all the sound waves get trapped in there and they bounce around and get absorbed. So rooms with like carpet are less echoey. We all know this to be true. Rooms with fabric or tapestries on the wall. If you're talking on a couch if you're on a dining room table, the sound will bounce off the table. If you're on a couch, it'll get absorbed by the couch. Like, check the echoiness of your recording. Do some test recordings too.
Yeah, a few things too. The different types of foam will, the type of foam matters. The density of the foam matters. There's a lot of stuff, science that we won't get into with that. The big thing too with the placement of these, we did clap, but it's also first reflection points.
Yeah.
Literally right off camera, if you go this way, basically where I'm speaking, there's a panel. Maxim could do the same thing, and then we have the second reflection points covered.
Yeah. So if you were to, play pool with the sound waves, shoot it at that wall, it comes out the same angle, add more absorbers down there.
Yeah. Corners.
There's also ceiling.
I'm trying to think. I mean, again, this is all going to be changing. So this is it fits with the theme. As we grow, we'll share the information about how things are changing. But basically at a fundamental level, talks about the recording setup, we talked about the camera setup, we talked about the lighting setup. Those are the three big things you really need to know.
Yep.
And like we have done, it's a lot of trial and error. Again, I came in, I was like, all right, we got this new thing that I got from my roommate that moved out. What works? Our initial lights before we bought the key lights were just shop lights.
Yep.
And we just have been piecing it. It's basically get clients in here, like piecing together the studio, get clients in here, get rolling, get some more pieces, upgrade, try and get more clients, and just growing iteratively.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the whole philosophy that we've had throughout these, which is don't let things get in your way from just starting.
If we had worried about making the space perfect, we wouldn't have even started anything by now.
We would have also been in a ton of debt.
Oh yeah, ton of debt.
If we bought everything we want, I'd say 30, 40,000.
Yeah, I don't even
the equipment.
So it's like as with any project, it's more important that you get it together and leave room to improve later than it is to get everything right the first time. You won't know why you need those lights until you're using a light that isn't working, like you won't know, like arms, microphones, all of it. Every little detail about these setups is get something that works. As you start to use it, you'll figure out what you need to improve or why it isn't working, and you can make a better informed decision later.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much stress about getting it right in all of that, but just try it out. And I will say in this cleanup, there's things that we found that we're probably not going to need to use. So if you bought a bunch of expensive stuff and realized you didn't need it, hopefully you could return it. If not, you're just kind of stuck with it.
B&H has a great return policy.
But basically, it's like you really don't know what you need until you're there.
Absolutely. And that's like, it's one of those things where you can't know why what you're about to buy is not going to work for you unless you just start using it.
Yeah.
Like even if you go high end on something, you spend a lot of money on something, you might find like, oh, this has very specific drawbacks that I could have in no way anticipated, So just make it work, continually upgrade.
Tim Gunn style.
Yeah.
we got someone in recording. It's a new podcast. Aaliyah watches your favorite movie coming in shortly. Let's go highlights very quick and we'll wrap.
Studio highlights for the week. I'm glad. So I was out of town in Vermont. So I'm glad that we didn't have a recording on Saturday. So you got, instead of covering me for a 6-hour day or something, it was just like hanging out.
I did all this.
You did move
but
this
stuff. It was so much better than sitting and recording.
Yeah, it just worked out because I felt bad. I'm like, I always feel bad when I have to have you cover a day for me. And so it's nice when those days end up being nothing.
Yes. So. My highlight, it's Andres and Andrew. They record a couple of podcasts here. But they've been listening to these. And
really?
This is really helpful.
Nice.
And I appreciate them listening. It's good to know that these are valuable. This is a podcast too that it's like we put it out there. We let the YouTube algorithm kind of do its thing, and we don't really promote it. It's like hopefully helpful. The diary over time as we grow, this will become a fun record and hopefully useful in the meantime.
Yep.
But knowing that people that come here, listen, take something from it. That's what matters. Hopefully people that watch too, they learn something or even a question happens, and then we can help you in the same process, whether you record here or not.
Yeah. Yep.
But the fact that people...
I'm glad this is helpful to people.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Yeah, it really did. So that's my highlight. We forgot to mention our affiliate link last week, but I got an idea. Next time you're in, we're going to do some nice videos that I'll just cut. We'll put in there like a little episode, so we don't need to go over it now. Just make it simple, streamline it. Knows best is the affiliate link. We don't need to say more than that. Great candle shop, though. And then find us on Instagram at
My Friend's Basement Studio.
Email us,
myfriendsbasementstudio@gmail.com.
And then
myfriendsbasement.studio
for the website. And reach out to us again, like we said.
Hit us up with your questions or topics, whatever you want us to cover. We will. That's not to say we don't have ideas for this podcast. That's just to say that we would like to more directly help you in the ways we can help you.
I think, and the best form of this is more interactive.
Yep.
So Reddit, we're coming for you too. If you don't comment on it, we're going to Reddit. We're finding their questions.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. Subscribe, go check out a lot of the podcasts at our studio. And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.